Welcome back to another Nickel and Dime Travels videos, everyone. So in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about our United Airlines flight from Chicago O'Hare to Honolulu, Hawaii. For this flight, we took United's Polaris business class on their flagship 777-300ER, and this was the experience that we had. We start off in a place that people go to only to fly away from as quickly as possible, and that would of course be Chicago's O'Hare Airport. Although I have to say, walking through the terminal during those rare uncrowded moments can actually be kind of pleasant. I've always enjoyed the architecture of the airport terminals with the high ceilings creating a picturesque kind of setting. So let's take a walk through the United Terminal and look around. And on doing that, you'll find mostly the same types of shops you'll see at every major US airport, like this Starbucks here with the typical line of caffeine-starved customers. And of course, next to it, the obligatory Hudson News, for those who want to read a few magazines for free before leaving without actually buying anything. Of course, there's a Chili's and one of my personal favorites, Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory. This was a morning flight, so thankfully we were saved from the majority of the crowds here and could actually move around fairly easily. And that about wraps up our pre-flight walk through the terminal. So let's move on. Now it's time for everyone's favorite part of any flight, where we all cram tightly together in a line during a major worldwide pandemic in order to board a plane. Unfortunately, due to the chaotic nature of the boarding process, I wasn't able to capture a lot of video from this part, and most of what you'll see came after the flight took off and things settled in a little. But trust me, this is pretty much what it looked like, unfortunately. So here we are on the flight with a look at the actual seat area in Polaris business class, taking a closer look at the video screen and the footwell area, which for me was probably the lowest part of the experience. As we start to pan around, there's a coat hanger next to the video screen, and we have the placement for the in-flight entertainment remote, as well as the charging ports along the side. Here's an actual look at the IFE remote, which worked fairly well for navigating the menus for the most part. We also have a small storage compartment with minimal room for a few personal items. You're not going to store anything too big here, but at least it provides something. There's also a small reading light next to that compartment. To be honest, I never really used this, but it's probably nice if you're looking to do any significant amount of reading while you're on board. And finally, we have a quick look around the business class cabin area on United. So now I just want to go over a few highlights of our experience on United. First, let's take a look at a view of the seat area. Overall, it was a nice experience and gave us a great amount of room to stretch it out in, far more than what you could get on a typical economy seat. By the end of our 8-hour plus flight, I could actually say I felt pretty refreshed sitting in that seat, which is something I could never imagine saying about an economy seat for that length of time. There was also a nice amount of space to store small items thanks to the placement of the convenient table next to the seat. And there was even a powered divider window between seats shown here. So in the event that you got really tired of your flight partner, all you had to do was press this button and problem solved. One thing I didn't really like was the amount of space available under the tray table. For a taller person like myself, I found my knees were hitting this table before I was able to fully recline the seat, leading to the less than ideal seating position for me. It was still comfortable, sure, but I think if they moved the table away from this area, it would have offered a much greater level of comfort. Here's another look at the IFE remote, which, like I mentioned before, worked okay. There were a few times where it wasn't as responsive as I would have liked, and I had to resort to the touchscreen controls, but for the most part, it worked as expected. So now let's get to the meal service, and this was kind of a mixed bag. There were 60 business class seats on our United 777-300 300 ER, and I guess United couldn't count that high, because when they got to me during the meal service, I was told they were out of meals. The flight attendant offered me what they called a bananas Foster for some reason, even though this isn't what I think of when I think of a bananas Foster. It was essentially a waffle with a small amount of fruit on top. Not bad, but certainly not very filling if you were at all hungry. This is the meal my wife was served, and it was definitely more substantial. It's a quiche with some tomato sauce and sausages. I tried a bite of the quiche and I thought it was pretty decent as far as quiche is concerned. Here's a look at the meals we got on our return flight. This was the chicken teriyaki, which was pretty standard fare for chicken teriyaki with a bit of sweet and tangy taste to it. I enjoyed this one. Next up is the fried rice dish my wife got. I didn't think too much of this one, to be honest. It lacked any real flavor and just wasn't that satisfying. Lastly, our dessert was a package of chocolate-covered macadamia nuts. These were pretty decent and tasted like your typical boxed chocolates to me. Nothing super memorable about them. And of course, we've got to talk about the all-important amenity kit, which came in this wrapped plastic bag. I must admit, I was kind of hoping for something a little bit better presentation-wise, as I've seen other United business class videos showing fancy-looking metal canisters looking far more substantial than this. But maybe that's reserved for the international routes. And so here are the contents of that monstrous bag. Essentially just an eye mask, toothbrush, and what turned out to be the world's smallest ever bottle of toothpaste. So nothing too impressive here, pretty forgettable. But in these times, I guess we need to be grateful for what we get. Concludes our experience with the flight itself. However, before we finish the video, we did want to include a little tour of the Plumeria Airport Lounge that we visited on our way back from Honolulu. This lounge is located in Terminal 1 at Honolulu Airport and is accessible for those flying business class on Hawaiian Airlines and for those like ourselves who have a Priority Pass membership through their credit cards. Let's start with a basic walk around of the food and drinks area of this lounge. You have some basic junk food here, including chips and some simulated fruit tasting shoes. From there, we move on to some mini deli sandwiches. And to be honest, these were probably the most substantial items in the lounge. Not that that's saying too much. They were basic cold cut sandwiches, individually wrapped. They had two varieties, a meat version and a veggie version, so that both groups can be equally disappointed by the offering. Next, we have a hot water station with the tea bags next to it, along with a microwavable noodle bowl, which neither of us tried, so we can't really comment on that. Next to that, they did manage to have a few bottles of wine, which we didn't try, but I can't imagine were too premium given the quality of the options provided. We also have some coffee and an espresso machine, which actually did produce some decent coffee to help keep us awake before the flight. Now just some closing thoughts here on the lounge. We both thought this lounge offered a decent escape from the normal terminal experience. We really liked that the staff was focused on maintaining the cleanliness of the facility. As soon as someone got out from their seat to leave, they were all over that space cleaning it, so that gave us some confidence that things were really being maintained well. Having said that, the food and drink options weren't really that great, and the space was small, so don't expect too much here. The charge for a day pass is $40, and I can't really recommend it at that price. The value just isn't there for what you're getting. I would say only come here if you're getting it for free, either with a business class or through your credit card. Well, that wraps up another one of our videos. Thanks everyone for watching.